The following recording originates from Radio Eastern 98.1 FM's fortnightly financial and life planning segment. Welcome to FLP's Financial Life Planning Podcast. In this segment, we'll be discussing the 10 money lessons to teach your kids before they turn 10.
What we do know in a rapidly changing world, teaching your kids about managing money has never been more important. Kids developing good financial skills from an early age will help them in their latter life. So the earlier we can teach them these skills, so under the age of 10 we're suggesting, means it's going to really set them up for their life long term. So it's about teaching your kids the basics from a very young age on how to budget, how to spend money, how to save, which all becomes good habits for us for the latter part of your life. And as parents, we all act as role models, and I've recently learnt that as well with our two kids under 2. The role model role becomes more important, and very much the case when it comes to financial management. It's really important as parents and as grandparents, you play a role in helping your child or grandchild understand the value of money. So what research shows, Rush, that teaching kids about money is best achieved through real life experiences and life examples as provided by their parents. So what we're going to do is step through 10 money lessons that you can teach your kids or grandchildren before they turn 10. So the first lesson, I'm sure both of you have heard this saying before, money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah, we found that.
Yeah, so it's often one that I remember as a young one that my mum and dad used to sort of mention to me, and in these days it's more relevant because we've got credit cards, internet banking, online shopping, so children actually don't see the actual exchange of physical money. So they see their parents swipe their cards at the registers, and as a result, children don't often realise that money is a limited resource. They just think it belongs on some card that's unlimited. So it's really important that when you purchase goods that you explain to your child that in order to have this money available on this card, mum and dad had to work for this money, and the reason why it's available on this card is because it's stored in a personal bank account which we've been saving. And it's left in a bank because it's safe and secure. But equally, it's more convenient when you're paying for items, given it's on a card versus making sure you've got cash at hand.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I've sort of talked to my grandchildren about it because money doesn't grow on trees, does it? But you've got to learn that lesson to start with, that you don't ask for things and expect that you'll give them. Absolutely. Be given them straight away. And
that's the point there, is that these days, because the kids actually don't physically see the money, they don't actually understand that there's actually a transfer of money, if you know what I mean, because it's done through an online banking mechanism or done through a card. They actually don't see the exchange of the money occurring. So that's where the lesson is. You need to explain that inside this card is a bank link to a bank account which has cash that mum and dad or the grandparents have built up through working over the years, and it's through that. It's not limited. It's not unlimited, shall I say? It is a limited resource. So we need to be very conscious of how we spend our money. That's sort of the message. Money lesson number 2 is cost versus value. So a good live example is when you next go shopping at the supermarket. Shall I say? Explain to your kids how each item has a different price. Okay, how you can get a cheaper or more expensive version of the same product. So a good exercise to do is to ask your kids in the aisles when you're getting whatever it may be from the aisle, ask them to compare the prices of all the different products, and then explain to them the difference between the value in each of those products. Why is one item more expensive than the other? And perhaps ask them to pick out the most or the best value or the cheapest price. So then they get a sense of the same product can come at a different price, and ideally you want to try and find the price that has the lowest price attached to it. Money lesson number 3, Russ, is giving pocket money for household chores. So often the best way to teach kids to manage their money is actually to give them money to manage themselves. Okay, so but in order for them to have money, the best thing to do is actually make them earn it. So going to your point there, Norm, is getting, say, your teenagers out getting their part-time or casual job on the weekends to earn their own money. For the case of those under 10, obviously they can't get a job at that age, so the idea is perhaps get them to take the bins out once a week or unstack the dishwasher.
Yep.
And if they do their list of chores, and it might be on the whiteboard in your kitchen, then have you taken out the bins this week? Have you unstacked the dishwasher at least twice this week? Yes, you tick that, and as a result they get their $5 or $10 for the week. And that's when the decision making occurs for the child, where if you give them money for the week, then they've got the ability to spend that, or do they save that money? So that's where the decision making starts to come into play. And if they decide to blow their allowance one week on a new video game, it may mean they might not have enough funds left over for the following week for a new gadget they really, really want. So that's another good lesson in itself, is making sure that you learn firsthand the consequences of overspending. I will sort of point out that pocket money and the idea of pocket money is not appropriate for every family situation, so it really comes down to your own personal circumstances as to whether giving pocket money to your children for doing household chores is appropriate for your circumstances. Of course, it's not appropriate for every household. The fourth money lesson, Russ, is the old saying, good things come to those who wait. And that's even drilled into me today by many. I think the generation, my generation and the generation underneath me and the generation under that, it's more to do with the society we live in, where everything's instant, through social media. You get instant feedback on communication with friends. Everything's at your disposal. So I think the children coming in really need to know the importance of delayed gratification, which will help combat the buy now, pay later mentality. So that's a good example as to how this could work in the household, and it's a bit of a funny little example, but hopefully this explains the importance of waiting for things. So the example that we're going to give here is, rather than buying or ordering a pizza online and getting it delivered, why don't you suggest to your family that we all make it together in the kitchen, and we put all the kids get involved, put all their special ingredients they really like, and the notion here is that the homemade pizza takes longer than getting one delivered. These days you can get pizzas delivered once you order within 10-15 minutes. But the idea here is that you all work together and make this homemade pizza. And the advantage here is, and the lesson here is, it costs you less. Of course, it takes you longer, but equally it's going to taste much better as well, being homemade. Money lesson number 5, set a wish list. So often children, and I've got a 2.5-year-old, and no doubt that this is going to come, but he's going to come to me with a mile long of bits and pieces that he wants. So in this situation, the best advice is to sit down with your child or your grandchild and make a wish list and discuss what's important about each wish on that list. Then help your child prioritise and rank the list, and then select the most important wish to purchase from there. So that's a good way to go about it, because most children will come with a mile long of things they want to get, and then if you just sit down with them and ask them what's important to them about each of those items they want to buy,
sort it out. That's right.
And then you prioritise and rank from there. Lesson number 6, which is linking internet usage to costs. Now, these days, most kids are on their iPads. Even my 2.5-year-old knows how to use my phone and iPad on, going through all the apps, watching his little shows. So they're using it, and they're using it to the full maximum. So the idea here is, when you next get your internet bill, sit down with your children and say, look, the internet bill came to $120 this week. In order to pay for that, it actually took me a day's work to earn that money. So the kids start to get a connection between, obviously, time spent at work and the need for money. and also highlighting the fact that, the internet costs is actually, a cost item that the family needs to pay for each week or each fortnight or each month, however it's paid. So potentially it may get the children to think twice about spending time on the internet, but maybe that's wishful thinking. Money lesson number 7, Russ and Norm, complete a family budget together. So it's probably for those who don't have a budget, it's a good opportunity to do one, but also to involve the kids and then explain to them, out of all the cost items, this is how much it costs to run the house, and this is how much it costs to, get you to school each week and get the clothes on your back and make sure you do the Oz kick and the cost for that, etc., etc. So it sort of points out to them, this is how much it costs, this is the reason why we need to work, and also for us to save money for other things such as a family holiday, we need to have this budget in place. So it's a really good lesson to go through for kids. And again, the reason why you're going through these lessons, it's more for the long-term benefits. So the point we made earlier, which you may not have picked up, was that it sort of ingrains into the young children's minds the importance of budgeting, saving, and managing funds appropriately. And the earlier you can do that, and the role that parents play as role models and grandparents, it's really important you get those messages across. Money lesson number 8, setting savings goals. So the example here, as I mentioned, the best way for kids to learn is through real life examples. So young Johnny comes up to mum and dad and says, "Mum and dad, I really want this and that." And this really presents a great opportunity to teach your kids the value of setting savings goals. So the question you can ask little Johnny is, how much does that new bike cost? The typical answer would be, I don't know. We'll then ask your child to then do some research and come back with 3 options. And that's where the price versus value lesson starts to come in. So you can sit down with your child or children and say, okay, you've researched 3 bikes. Here's the different prices, and then talk about the different features of the bike and why one's more expensive than the other, and perhaps why you could sacrifice certain benefits over others to get the best value bike that the kid may or the child might have in mind. So where the savings comes into plan, so once you know what it's going to cost, then you need to set a goal to put away so much money each week. As a result of maybe the chores you do, put it in a money jar above the fridge, or potentially even set up a bank account in the kid's name, and from there the money can grow to meet the cost of the item that you're looking to buy. In this case, little Johnny wanted his bike, so that's going back to one of the other lessons of, good things come to those who wait. So for Johnny to get his bike, he just needs to save up and wait for what he wants, and then he has that greater appreciation for it when it comes through. The second last money lesson is highlighting the value of compound interest. And again, this is a lesson that we've sort of mentioned before in other shows, but again, there's no reason why you can't introduce the idea of the power of compound interest to your children at a young age. And the best way to do it is actually doing a bit of an internet research, search on an interest online calculator and plug in a figure of $20 and then show how $20 with interest can grow over the months or over the years, without having to necessarily add more money to grow the balance. So that's a really good lesson, and for children to get their heads around that at a very young age by putting money in shares or in an online savings account that earns 2-3% for cash, or call it 6-7% for 8% for shares. Then they can see the value of investing for the long term. The last money tip, Russ, the gift of giving. Have your kids donate a portion of their allowance to a charity is a good way to teach children that money can be used to help people rather than just for buying things. So I think that's a really important lesson. And also reminding your children that it's not about how much you give as well. It's every bit counts and every cent counts. So I think that's a really important lesson. The earlier you can sort of instill that into children, that obviously helping others rather than putting yourself first is a really good lesson, and really set themselves up in terms of the values that they will hold as an adult in later life.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Financial Lifestyle Partners Podcast. Please note, the information provided in this podcast is of a general nature and does not factor in your personal circumstances. If you require any assistance with your own financial life planning needs, we would welcome you to contact our office on 03 9873 4000.